up on this Friday edition of Newsline at noon. Visiting U.S. Vice President Joe Biden hold talks with President Park Geun-hye to discuss North Korea and a regional row sparked by China's recent declaration of a new air defense zone. South Africa's first black president and anti-apartheid icon Nelson Mandela dies at the age of 95 after suffering a recurrence of a lung infection. Plus, Kimjang, the tradition of making and sharing Korea's main dish kimchi, has been designated as a UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity, bringing the total number of UNESCO-recognized Korean cultural assets to 16. These stories and more on Newsline at noon.
Where's the best place for bibimbap?
Les Jeux Olympiques d'hiver se dérouleront-ils à Pyeongchang?
هل أنتم حقاً سابع أكبر مصدر في العالم؟
この歌手は誰ですか？你好，最近哪部电视剧的人气最旺？
Korea is attracting interest from around the world. The more you know, the more you want to know. Dynamic Korea.
Good to have you with us. You're watching Newsline at noon on Friday, December 6th. I'm Kimjang in Seoul.
And I'm Mark Broom. Thanks ever so much for joining us. President Park Geun-hye met with visiting US Vice President Joe Biden at the presidential office of Cheongwadae this morning, and topping the agenda was the subject of China's new air defense identification zone.
For more on the president's meeting with Biden, we now connect live to our presidential office correspondent, Jinju at Cheongwadae. So Jinju, fill us in on the latest.
Yeonji, the meeting between President Park and U.S. Vice President Biden has just ended. The talks are known to have mainly focused on China's new air defense identification zone, which has currently shaken up the security landscape in Northeast Asia. Biden, in his talks with Chinese leader Xi Jinping on Thursday, is known to have made it clear that Beijing's unilateral decision to redraw its airspace is a provocative act and that the U.S. cannot accept it. In today's meeting, President Park reportedly explained to Vice President Biden Seoul's plan to expand its own air defense zone to include the Korean-controlled reef of Eodo and the island of Marado. Another important topic discussed during today's 30-minute meeting was Japan's recent move to exercise its right of collective defense. Pundits expect that President Park would have conveyed the Korean government's concerns on the issue, as Biden is the first high-ranking U.S. official to visit Seoul after Washington officially backed Tokyo's push to engage in collective self-defense.
And Jinju, we hear that a national security meeting will be held at Cheongwadae later this afternoon.
Yes, that's right. At 3 p.m., Presidential National Security Chief Kimjang will preside over a security meeting with related ministers here at the presidential office. Now, during this meeting, Seoul's top security officials will aim to finalize the Korean government's plan to expand its air defense zone. However, even if they make a final decision on this, it seems that there will be no official announcement on the issue today, as the government will first have to notify neighboring countries such as China and Japan of the plan through diplomatic channels. So this is why observers say the announcement will be made sometime after this weekend. Korea's new air defense identification zone will include the Korea-controlled Eodo, which China unilaterally included in its own air defense zone recently, and the Korean islands of Marado and Hongdo, which are currently included in Japan's air defense zone. Yeonji?
Yes, thank you, Jinju, for that report. Do keep us updated on any new developments we get throughout the day. Now, in other news, a tactical airship flying over South Korea's border island of Baekryong-do crashed in the middle of a test flight on Thursday.
As it was unmanned, there were no casualties, but it has set back the nation's $22 million airship development project quite a bit. Han Daeun reports.
The unmanned airship was running a test flight Thursday over South Korea's Paekmyeongdo, located near the maritime border with North Korea, when it crashed at around 6 p.m. Korea time. The airship, which was connected to the ground with wires, fell about 4 kilometers off of the island's Sagot beach from an altitude of around 2 kilometers. The airship crashed when officials tried to bring it down after a technical problem was detected in its main body. Officials at the Defense Ministry say the ship suddenly deflated while descending. Strong winds also hampered the collection process.
There were strong winds until 9 p.m. The winds were strong enough to shake windows.
The airship project was launched in 2010 following North Korea's shelling of the South Korean border island of Yeonpyeongdo. The government has spent $22 million equipping the ships with high-tech surveillance gear that can watch the North Korean military 24 hours a day. But the project has suffered several setbacks, and with this crash, it appears the original deployment date of 2014 will have to be pushed back. 한다은, Arirang News.
New satellite imagery of a political prison camp in North Korea suggests that the country has expanded the size and scale of the camp. The images were released by Amnesty International in a report that includes a horrifying account from a former camp guard. Son Jang-in tells us more.
This is North Korea's largest political prison, Camp 16, shown in a satellite image taken on May 25th. Located in Hwaseong-gun, Hamgyeongbuk-do, the camp is about 560 square kilometers, equivalent to half the size of the capital of Pyongyang. The images, released as part of a report released Wednesday by Amnesty International, show new housing blocks have been added to the site when compared with images taken of the camp 2 years ago. The human rights group estimates that the number of inmates at the camp has increased slightly from the previous estimated number of 20,000 2 years ago. The report also includes testimony from a North Korean defector surnamed Lee, who worked as a guard at Camp 16 from the 1980s to the mid-1990s. Lee said that detainees were forced to dig their own graves and were then killed with hammer blows in their necks. The former guard said he also witnessed prison officials strangling detainees and then beating them to death with wooden sticks. He said the officials also frequently raped the female inmates before killing them. Amnesty International has called on North Korea to close the camps immediately and urged countries like China to stop repatriating North Koreans who flee the country on the grounds that they will likely be sent to the Gulag. Son Jang-in, Arirang News.
Nelson Mandela, the man who attained saint-like status not just in South Africa but across the world, has died at the age of 95. The symbol of a just struggle against racism, Mandela was also a global icon of reconciliation and forgiveness. Our Yurian reports.
Fellow South Africans, our beloved Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, the founding president of our democratic nation, has departed.
In the televised address on Thursday, the South African president announced the death of the world's most revered statesman, Nelson Mandela, at the age of 95. An hour after Zuma's announcement, U.S. President Barack Obama, who often referred to Mandela as a personal inspiration, heaped praise on his hero.
We've lost one of the most influential, courageous, and profoundly good human beings that any of us will share time with on this earth.
Mandela's death is being attributed to respiratory infections that date back to his time in jail when he was first diagnosed with tuberculosis. He spent 27 years in prison, locked up for his fight for freedom against his country's apartheid system, before being released in 1990. The nearly 3 decades behind bars did not slow Mandela, nor did it leave him bitter or twisted with hatred.
Your struggle, your commitment, and your discipline has released me to stand before you today.
Less than 3 months after being released in 1990, he held face-to-face talks with National Party leader, the then President F.W. de Klerk, and through painstaking negotiations, began to pick apart the white political domination. Mandela was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts to end white rule in 1993. Only a year later, his efforts laid fruit to the first multiracial elections, and Mandela was elected South Africa's first black president, marking a true end to apartheid.
I cherish the ideal of a new South Africa, where all South Africans are equal.
For many South Africans, Mandela will long be in their memories as Madiba, his traditional clan name often used as a sign of affection. And for the world, he will remain a global icon for racial equality for centuries to come. Yurian, Arirang News.
Korea has, in principle, reached a free trade agreement with its seventh largest trading partner, Australia. Korea's automobile and electronics industries in particular are pleased with the deal, but the agriculture sector is expected to take a big hit. Hwang Jie reports.
Korea's trade ministry said Thursday that it had finished negotiations for a free trade agreement with Australia, moving one step closer to scrapping tariffs on key exports. The agreement on the free trade deal includes writing the investor-state dispute settlement system into the trade pact. Australia was originally against including the system in the proposed agreement, which allows overseas businesses to take action against Australia for apparent breaches.
Korea invests a lot in Australian resources and energy. In order to protect these investments, the ISD settlement mechanism had to be part of the agreement, and we put a lot of effort into making sure it was.
The two countries aim to cut tariffs on most of the products traded within 8 years after the trade deal goes into effect. Once it does go into effect, tariffs on Korean automobiles and electronics goods like televisions that currently have an average tariff of 5% will be cut immediately and completely. Tariffs for auto parts, meanwhile, will be cut within 3 years. Korea's agriculture sector, however, is expected to take a hit from the trade pact. Tariffs on Australian agricultural exports such as wheat, dairy, and beef will be eliminated altogether. Korea's trade ministry said that it tried to minimize the trade deal's impact on local farmers by agreeing to gradually phase out tariffs on Australian beef over 15 years. The agreement also exempts Korea from opening its markets to a number of agricultural products like rice, apple, and potatoes. Before the deal takes effect, the two nations must go through their own approval processes, which will likely be completed in the first half of next year. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
In what will be a big blow to the company's Korean operations, General Motors will discontinue its flagship Chevrolet brand in Europe from 2016 to concentrate more on its Opel and Vauxhall brands. The US automobile giant says the Chevy brand failed to build a significant market share in Europe, largely due to the difficult economic situation there. Chevrolet has a paltry 1% share of the European auto market, while Opel and Vauxhall collectively hold about 6%. The decision is expected to directly hit operations in Korea, where most of the Chevrolet models sold in Europe are produced. Korea exported around 186,000 Chevrolet models to Europe last year. Seoul has been named the best place for business meetings by two leading magazines in the travel industry. The Korean capital was named the best international business meetings destination for the second straight year by the US edition of Business Traveler magazine in a poll of its roughly 185,000 subscribers. The magazine Global Traveler also selected Seoul as the best MICE city in a recent reader survey. MICE stands for Meetings, Incentives, Conferences and Exhibitions. Seoul hosted over 250 conventions last year, and the city is planning to significantly increase its exhibition and convention infrastructure.
For your fill of Korean and international news. Join Chae Yu-sun and Mark Broom every weekday at lunchtime. Newsline at noon.
Plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring bills. In welcome news for the nation, Kimjang, the tradition of making and sharing kimchi, has made UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity list. The announcement came Thursday at the 8th Annual UNESCO World Heritage Congress in Baku, Azerbaijan. The socio-cultural aspects of making kimchi, such as strengthening family cooperation and social solidarity, were evaluated as an important element of Korean society. Korea has a long tradition of not only making kimchi, but also sharing the dish with friends, family, and neighbors. With Kimjang making the list, the total number of Korean intangible cultural assets is now 16. Korean items on the list include Korea's traditional songs, rituals, and its martial arts. Others include traditional wooden architecture and a traditional group dance. And in honor of Korea's Kimjang culture being placed on the UNESCO list, a festival was held Thursday at Gyeongbok Palace in Seoul, where the spicy side dish was the main event. Our Shin Se-min files this report.
The First Lady of the United States makes it. Health magazine selected it as the world's healthiest food, and even doctors recommend it for its health effects. It's kimchi, and it's been a part of Korean history for over 1,000 years. Every year at about this time from the end of November until the middle of December, Koreans make the fermented side dish with their family or in groups, a process that's called kimjang. It takes that many people because kimchi is usually made in large quantities, enough to provide nutrition throughout the cold winter month.
The culture surrounding kimchi began as people in the past started making the dish in large groups and share the product afterward. Nowadays, people in communities bond by doing the same and promoting the act as a sharing culture.
In light of the season, the Korean Cultural Heritage Administration and the Agriculture Ministry is hosting a 2-day event that runs through Friday on the culture of kimchi. A ceremony highlighting how people in the past would offer the dish to kings is taking center stage at the event, while elsewhere different types of kimchi from 8 different provinces are available for visitors to sample. A number of foreign ambassadors to Korea have also participated and even got in on the act of making their own kimchi. And attendees to the event have another reason to celebrate Korean staple dish, as Kimjang has made it onto UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage list. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Are you interested in learning Korean? Well, for the first time ever, a Korean university is offering free Korean language courses for people all around the world. So what makes this program so special? Kari Lee has a story.
Traditionally, when you think of learning a second language, let's say Korean, you think of yourself in a classroom with a teacher and other classmates. But what about taking these university-approved courses in the comfort of your own home or even at a coffee shop? It's called Quick Korean, and it's an online educational program created by Cyber University of Korea. The program launched this week, and it is the first time a local university has offered online Korean language classes free of charge to people all over the world.
I like how the service is in English and I can understand it perfectly. I can use it everywhere and anytime.
The classes are in video form and are offered in 3 languages: English,
Hello everyone.
Korean,
공부하겠습니다.
and in Chinese.
大家想不想知道呢?
Because these courses are available online, they can easily be accessed through your computer, tablet PC, or your smartphone. From beginner level 1 classes to the bit more advanced classes of level 4, the courses go over the grammar, the history of the language, and basic words used in everyday scenarios.
내일 시간 있어요? 같이 영화를 보고 싶어요.
미안해요. 수업 끝나고 약속이 있어요.
아.
Growing number of people throughout the world are interested in learning Korean language. But those language offering usually done by offline setting, and realize that it has a pretty limited range of the services.
To develop the program's courses, a group of language scholars from all around the nation came together.
The program introduces one Korean family and follows the lives of each family member. All the lesson plans are connected with one another, so going along with this program can be like watching a TV series.
Even professors from abroad plan to use this service in their classrooms.
터키 사람들이 한국 문화에도 많이 관심을 가지고 한국어를 많이 배우려고 해요. 그래서 이번 바른 한국어가 터키에서 많이 이용될 것 같고 저도 개인적으로 학생들한테 많이 알려주고 싶어요.
Connie Lee, Arirang News.
A suicide bomb and armed men had an attack on the defense ministry in the Yemeni capital of Sana'a on Thursday, which left 52 dead and dozens wounded. Reports say that a truck loaded with explosives drove into the compound, clearing the way for gunmen who shot soldiers, doctors and nurses at a military hospital inside. The US has since raised its alert status in the region and said it is prepared to stand by the Yemeni government. Although no one has claimed responsibility for the attack, experts have said it bears the hallmarks of an al-Qaeda-style attack because of the suicide element. In July 2012, an attack by a suicide bomber killed more than 90 people in the capital, with al-Qaeda later claiming responsibility. The anti-government protests in Thailand were put on ice Thursday to mark the birthday of the country's king, who called on the Thai people to do their duty for the sake of the public without referencing the ongoing political turmoil there. Thailand has been gripped for several days now by mass protests against Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra, who is accused of being a proxy for her ousted brother Thaksin. 86-year-old King Bhumibol Adulyadej, who has diffused previous crises, called for stability and security at a gathering of the country's top leaders. The protest leader, Suthep Thaugsuban, says demonstrations will resume on Friday in order to eradicate the Thaksin regime from Thailand and return the power to the people.
And now, let's get an update on the weather with our Lee Ji-hyun at the Weather Center. Good afternoon, Ji-hyun.
Happy Friday, Mark and Yunji. Well, yesterday we talked about some items that are hot sellers these days because of the toxic smog hanging over Korean peninsula. And do you guys remember what they were?
Yes, of course I do. It was only yesterday, of course. Face masks, air purifiers, hand sanitizer, and you also mentioned mint-flavored candy.
That's correct. And I'm sure that synapsis plants and spear flower, or jagumu in Korean, will be the next best sellers because these plants are known to absorb up to 50% of the fine dust in the air. So experts suggest that keeping 3 to 4 of them will help to improve the air quality in your home. So try to get your hands on at least one if you can, because the toxic smoke from China will be back throughout the winter. Well, it's cooler but brighter today, and that's because the cold air has pushed most of the dust particles out of the region. So Seoul metro area is having much clearer day, and it will remain mostly sunny throughout the day. Now, tomorrow is looking mild and sunny overall, so it will be a great idea or great date for outdoor activities. And if you're looking for something to do, there is a Persimmon Festival in Chungcheongnam-do over the weekend, and you want to check that out or spend some time outdoors on the weekend before the cold front comes back early next week. With that in mind, here are the readings for today. The afternoon high in Seoul will peak at 7, while the high in Daegu and Gwangju will get up to 11 and 10, while Busan peak at 12 under lots of sunshine. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju will see a high of 13 in the afternoon. Daejeon and Dokdo will get up to 8 and 7, but Mount Kimjang stays on the chilly side. Now that's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world. That's all for me this week. Hope you have a wonderful weekend, and back to Mark and Yeonji in the studio.
Well, thank you very much, Jiyeon, for the weather there, and I'm just happy to see that those fine dust particles seem to have gone away today, so enjoy the weekend. And that wraps it up for this hour. We'll be back same time next Monday for stories making headlines in Korea and around the world.
We will have more news coming up at 2 p.m. Korea time. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend.